Welcome to this week's Future Toolbox podcast. We explore the Z to A of life skills, where each letter stands for a topic and essential tool to help you get ahead in life. Meet Jules and Mark, creators of the multi-award-winning Future Toolbox, and enjoy their straightforward approach to creating growth mindsets that help people turn their dreams into realities. Whether you're a teen in education, a parent, a teacher, or part of a community group, start creating positive habits from today.
Hello and welcome to this week's Z to A podcast with Mark and Jules, the creators of the multi-award-winning Future Toolbox.
Hello.
And this week's letter we have is H for habits.
We do, and we're going to discuss how your daily habits influence your achievements and ultimately your success. So, Mark, what's a habit?
Yeah, a habit is a pattern of behaviour that's repeated frequently. So, for example, every single morning you have a cup of tea, don't you?
Yeah, that cup of tea in the morning is a habit of mine. And do you know that habit was formed from being a really little girl? Because my mum, bless her, every morning right up until I was in my teens, would wake me up with a cup of tea.
Oh, that's really sweet, isn't it?
I miss those days. And I miss her too. But now I get up in the morning and I put that kettle on. I really look forward to that cup of tea. But the reality is that I don't need it. I just like it. And when we go travelling, I don't get the opportunity to have a cup of tea most mornings, do I? So I can live without it, but I do love it.
You like to also habit hook with the cup of tea dance as well, don't you?
Oh, yeah. If I'm having a good day, then I have a little dance while the kettle's boiling.
Thinking about habits, a lot of people associate them with bad habits. And they say, oh, I do this, I do that, that's a bad habit of mine. But they can also be positive, can't they?
Yeah, habits can be really good. And that's why we call them the influence of habits, because they do have that influence on you and your behaviour.
I want to get the negatives out of the way first.
Let's get the bad ones.
Yeah, let's talk about bad habits. Now, in our book, Don't Get Your Neck Tattooed, there is actually a chapter called H for Habits, Creating Positive Habits. It starts off with the Huffington Post's World's Most Annoying Habits. And I'm not going to read them all out, but one of them on here is one that I used to have, being late.
Yes, he did used to always be late, but we've worked on that, haven't we?
Yeah. In reality, I was only ever 2 or 3, 4 minutes late, but I was late. And I used to really irritate people with it. And then when I made the change of turning that into a positive habit and being early, I just realised that why was I late? Why was I annoying people? There was no need for it at all, was there? So being late, that's a bad habit.
Yeah, another one that's in the book, and this one, I won't lie, does irritate me immensely.
It fills you with murderous rage, actually.
When people eat really loud or chew with their mouth open. You're sat on a train and you've got somebody next to you that's maybe munching on a packet of crisps, but you can hear every single crunch and every single swallow, and you just think, oh, hurry up and eat that bag.
And another one for me as well is when you're talking about the eating with your mouth open. I can't stand it when somebody is sitting there on their phone and they're talking really loud, or even nowadays playing a music video or playing something really, really loud sitting next to you. I don't want to hear it. Put your headphones in, please.
There's loads of different habits that are quite bad. Things like biting your nails, smoking and drinking, overspending. You know, you go out and you think, right, okay, that's my budget. But then you get swept away with something all glitzy and glamorous and you overspend. A big thing that teenagers do, and actually anybody that's studying for an exam, is
cramming for studying at the last minute. Procrastination. It's known internationally as the sport of procrastination.
Yeah.
But you're leaving things till the last minute. So if you're a student at school and you leave that bit of homework till the last minute, that bit of course till the last minute, or even worse, cram study for your exams at the very, very, very final stage, even dare I say it the night before, that's not a good habit to get into, is it?
Also, another one that people forget how important it is a bad habit of going to bed later than you should do, really, and not getting enough sleep. Now, sleep's a funny thing because if you have too much, that can have a negative effect. But yeah, trying to balance and getting a good night's sleep.
Yeah, we're going to lay into the teenagers. They're not good at going to bed when they should go to bed and getting up when they should get up, especially at weekends. And of course, we did Z is for Z's, a whole podcast on that.
So the big question is, why do we form habits in the first place? Now, did you know the average person makes 35,000 decisions a day, apparently? That's a huge amount. I'm trying to think of all these decisions now that I make every day. But if you think about it, it's true.
You always say I sit on the fence, so maybe I only make 30,000.
It's very, very true. But basically, our brains are always looking at ways to save energy. Now, forming habits helps us to do exactly that. So when an activity becomes habitual, we're often able to complete it in what's called autopilot mode. And then this low energy approach frees up some brain space, allowing you to focus on the more intensive tasks.
This has led me to a really lovely analogy. And I remember I used to talk to students about this when we were doing revision type sessions. And it's all about the neural pathways. Now, if you walk through a really, really overgrown forest or woodland, the first time you go through there, you're having to batter your way through the bushes that are overgrown. Mm-hmm. The next time you go through there, you start pushing a few more back. On about the 10th or 15th or 20th time, you start to form a path. And then that path becomes easier to walk. If you walk that path every single day, by the end of the year, there will be a natural pathway that goes through these bushes, and the bushes will start to grow slightly different. They won't grow where you've knocked them back. And that's similar to how we form a habit and also go into autopilot mode. So the autopilot is to walk along that path now. You probably wouldn't turn left or right and try and form a new path. You would just carry on. And that's how the habit works. It will just go along that neural pathway every single time without you thinking about it.
Oh, wow, that is so interesting. But I read apparently there's a reason why Barack Obama only wore 2 different colours of suits. And he also only ate the same breakfast every single day. He did this because that freed up more capacity for him to deal with the tougher decisions that he had for the rest of the day. That's the reason how habits can influence your day.
Oh, wow, that's fascinating. So I guess you just had to get up in the morning and say, shall I wear the black suit or the blue suit today?
Well, I suppose it depends. If you wore the blue one yesterday, it was the black today. It's an easy decision, isn't it? You haven't got to spend any time thinking about it.
Wow.
And if you had the same breakfast, again, you don't have to sit there and think, what shall I have today? So as you can see, looking at your day, most of the daily activities are made up of habits that you've already formed. Things like brushing your teeth to drive into work. Now, when you think about that, how many times have you driven to work, and when you've got there and you go to lock your car, get all the stuff ready and get out of the car, you can't actually remember the drive? Just because you've done it on autopilot, you know that route, don't you?
Yeah, that is true. And I guess it's the same with a teenager going to school. They walk out the door, they're on their phone, they arrive at school.
Yeah, whether they walked or got on the bus or even just got in the car with the parents.
But that's actually a really good example of something that's called habit hooking or habit stacking. And this is where you link 2 habits together. So in that case of the teenager, they know they've got to go to school, so they walk out the door and then they go on their phone. So the habit is they've obviously got to get to school and walk there and not think about that. But then the next unconscious habit is, well, while I'm walking along, I'll go on my phone or I'll listen to my music. And it could be the same as somebody driving to work. They get in the car, first thing they do, switch the radio on, listen to the radio, drive to work, forget about the journey to work, and then they get there.
That's it. It's a really good idea, is adding a habit into an already formed habit. For example, when I'm making my cup of tea in the morning and I maybe have a little boogie, but while that kettle's boiling as well, I also make sure that if anything needs putting away or cleaning within the kitchen, I use that time. So that's a habit that I've stacked onto my cup of tea habit.
We've talked a little bit about bad habits and then hooking your habits together, like your cup of tea dance and putting the stuff away and cleaning the kitchen. But how do we create a positive habit? Well, in our book, we wrote about the 30-day challenge. And there's things banded around saying that it takes 30 days to create a new habit or 3,000 repetitions. And there's absolutely no science behind that at all. The fundamental is you have to repeat something a lot of times until it becomes an unconscious habit. But we have a 3-step process in our book. The first thing you need to do before you start these 3 steps is make a commitment or even perhaps announce it and say, right, I'm going to change this.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have to announce it to the world or put it on social media, but as long as you make a commitment to yourself that you're going to make that change.
And this is often called the cue. It's the trigger within yourself to your brain to start a new behaviour.
So we need the cue. Once we've got the cue and the trigger, then we're going to go through 3 stages. Now, the first stage is what I would call the really painful, uncomfortable stage. Let's use an example from the Huffington Post most annoying habits. And one of them I really don't like, I can't do this myself, is biting my nails. I have to clip my nails. I can't bite them. There's something about it.
I always used to bite my nails as a young girl in school.
Yeah.
I used to make my fingers really sore.
I know. It's a terrible habit, isn't it?
It is.
So let's say we want to break that habit of biting your nails. The chances are, let's say you bite your nails now. You're that girl in school that bite your nails. You're going to unconsciously do that without thinking. So you've told people, you've announced to the world, your cue is, I'm going to stop biting my nails because I want nice nails. I want to paint them. I want them to look really great or whatever the case may be. Now, the first stage is this really painful, uncomfortable stage. It's not painful because you've been biting your nails. It's painful because you don't want to break the loop subconsciously. Each time you stop thinking about the habit and you're doing something else, what are you likely to do?
Bite your nails.
Now is the time where you have to really, really dig in and make such a conscious effort to stop biting your nails.
You do, and this part is also within the habit loop. It's called the craving part, and it's the motivational force behind our habits, the habit to want to bite your nails.
So you have the cue and the craving wrapped around the really painful, unbearable stage. But once you get past that bit, you get to step 2, which is known as the uncomfortable stage. And this is the bit right in the middle. Now, if you've made it to this stage, congratulations, because it's still tough, but you're now aware you're not biting your nails. And you might have even noticed that your nails are starting to grow, but you have the odd slip up and say bite finger number 3 or the little finger or something. But it's time to dig in and keep with it because you haven't quite made it into an unconscious habit of not biting your nails.
And again, within the habit loop, this is called the response. And this is the act that you perform or thought you have. And essentially, it is the habit of not biting your nails. Whether this happens depends really on how motivated you are, and also depends whether you've got any other obstacles in your way. This second stage, the uncomfortable stage, is where you're actually performing the response, the habit that you're trying to create or change.
But we have the Holy Grail, the bit that we're aiming for, and this is stage 3. And once you get here, this is called the unstoppable stage. I love this one. You're now in control of your habit and it no longer owns you. And at this point, you're conscious of your actions and you're more likely to have replaced the bad habit with a positive one or created a brand new one. Do be aware that you can slip back into bad habits once you get to this stage. It can be a little bit like a fitness habit, for instance. You could plateau and start thinking, I've reached my goal, I don't know where to go next. And then you slip back to the bad habits. So you've got to be really, really careful of that. And yes, this is the exciting bit. This is the Holy Grail, which is where you got to as a young girl when you stopped unconsciously biting your nails.
It was a great feeling to actually look down at my fingers and they looked nice. They looked much better than really, really short nails and painful bits along the side. That in the habit loop is called the reward, the last stage. And it's where your brain has been predicted from the cue. It's the end goal of every habit. And once you receive this reward, your brain reaffirms the association between that cue, what it was that you wanted to do, and your reward. For me, having much nicer nails was a fantastic reward. So with every habit that you want to create or change, think of the end goal, that reward, because that is the one thing that will keep you motivated.
Wow, this is progressing nicely. We've looked at bad habits. We've looked at how to create new habits and the habit loop. Let's look at some good habits next.
Yeah, let's be positive.
What's your favourite good habit?
Do you know, one of the things that I have found invaluable and try to make sure I keep to this every day is making sure I'm hydrating myself. because I have noticed a massive difference by having that extra pint of water.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I drink loads of water through the day. Another one of mine is to make the smoothie every morning for breakfast.
He does this?
Yeah.
And always pours me a lovely little glass.
So this morning we had banana, avocado, spinach and apple, which was very tasty.
Nice.
Yeah. Also, one of my other favourite ones, and I had to become really, really good at this when we, number one, set up our own business, but number two, also when I suffered the brain injury, was to become a really good listener. I had to focus on active listening. And one thing I know that is an irritation of yours is when people butt in halfway through a conversation, isn't it?
It is.
Also shared by me as well. I don't like this when you're having a conversation, somebody just jumps in and changes the subject. However, if you become a really, really good listener, then you actually become a better communicator. And sadly, listening is not really taught anywhere in the world. It's just something that we have to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Some other good habits are things like practicing mindfulness and self-care. Because, looking after yourself, we said about hydrating, we said about making sure you're getting the right sleep, but being mindful and taking care of yourself is so vital to your mental health that you need to create these habits.
I guess that fits in with the whole self-care. So what we put into our body, we've said about drinking loads of water, eating healthily. We've said about practicing mindfulness. We mentioned earlier sleep. There's also journaling. You journal regularly as well, don't you?
Yeah, journaling is a great way to, at the end of the day, just to jot down anything that's happened through that day, whether it be good or bad, but it gets it out of your system and you feel so much better for doing that.
Last week's podcast was called A for Affirmations. And this is another great daily habit that we can put in there, is to say our affirmations. And I've got a little equation here, which is affirmation plus habit equals success, which is, I think, what we actually finished last week's podcast with. So if you say the positive affirmation and hook that to your habit, that is going to lead you closer to your goal. And the examples of that, let's say you've set yourself a goal to say £500. Your goal is to save £500. You probably haven't saved £500. So your habit is to start saving. But your affirmation is to say the positive words, I have saved £500. And you constantly keep saying that until you reach that goal. So there is your affirmation plus your saving habit, which will lead you to success, and you'll have a bank balance of £500.
Woo-hoo. That's a brilliant example. So yeah, let's all start saving £500. Talking about habits, quitting them or changing them, sadly, this is going to require some effort. There is no easy button. It's going to take time, it's going to take determination and dedication. But habits, they are essential to you achieving your goals. Now, we did goals as well last week, didn't we? And these play a big, big part, and they will put you on the path towards your success, but are really well worth the time and, of course, that effort that you put in. But, and this is a big but for you guys, be patient. And if you remember my word of the year this year, be persistent. There will be setbacks, but if you persist in your aim, you will achieve that habit and that goal.
I'm sure that everybody's noticed that January's theme has been all around setting goals and how to stay on track towards achieving them by using the tools that we've shared with you all. So it's time for your call to action. And I'm going to give you a challenge